There's an issue I have with NBA discourse right now. I'm going to call it accolade first analysis or accolade only analysis. We just saw SGA and the Thunder get beat and go home in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals, and I think now's a good time to revisit those conversations about whether or not SGA caught up to or even surpassed peak Stephen Curry and peak Kobe Bryant. The logic of SGA being in the conversation with these all-time great guards was pretty simple. It's almost like a segment of the media and the fans had a checklist for SGA's awards. 2 MVPs, championship, finals MVP, historic regular season scoring, and they treated all those accomplishments as a direct one-to-one comparison with what peak Steph and Kobe did. When you use just awards and basic regular season numbers as the entirety of your argument, it can be a bit reductive, especially when you don't account for the all-time level playoff ceiling that both Steph and Kobe had in their peaks. I'm not saying awards don't matter, I'm just saying when we only focus on those without much nuance, here's what we're missing out on. See, this is a visualization of SGA's scoring efficiency from the regular season, and if you want to pause it, you can, but he's very, very efficient from every part of the court. And this is a visualization of SGA's scoring efficiency in the Western Conference Finals, and again, pause it if you want, but there are noticeable declines in efficiency from every part of the court. And look, to be fair, SGA played great last night in Game 7. He had 35 points on great efficiency. The shot making was amazing. But I can't ignore the broader trend of his playoff regression. Because if his elite scoring consistency and scoring efficiency are what got him into the conversations with peak Steph and peak Kobe, then we have to scrutinize it more closely in comparison to them. And you might be thinking this is just one series you're talking about, but the data actually shows a broader pattern every single year for the past 3 years in the postseason. For his past 3 postseasons, SGA's field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage, rim efficiency, mid-range efficiency, three-point efficiency, you name it. It's not just that they fluctuate, all of these things consistently decline in the playoffs. So every single year when the defense tightens up and teams are scouting against you for a whole series, your efficiency drops, and your efficiency is supposed to be what makes you stand out as a scorer. The same cannot be said for Steph and Kobe in their peak seasons. If you don't believe me, I'll show you. Neither Steph nor Kobe consistently saw statistical regression like this when it comes to scoring efficiency in the postseason. We can literally break this down and analyze it together. So what you see on the far right-hand column is relative true shooting. For those who don't know, relative true shooting measures your scoring efficiency against league average. So it's good for comparing guys across different eras because it tells you how efficient they were relative to the time they played in. And what you see from 2008 to 2010 in the playoffs, Kobe posted a 4.1% relative true shooting. He was 4% better than league average efficiency. Stephen Curry from 2015 and 2016, in those 2 postseasons, he was a 7.9 relative true shooting, which is elite for a guard. And then SGA, the last 3 postseasons, he's about 1% on relative true shooting. So he's 1% better than average in scoring efficiency. Why does this matter? Because SGA's relative true shooting in the regular season is usually more of an elite number. It's usually +7, something around there. But in the playoffs, it noticeably declines and the sample size is not exactly small. But here's the crazy part. When you really dive into it, in this 3-year span of time, SGA's most efficient playoff series was the first round against Phoenix this year and the second round against Denver last year. SGA played great in those series, but that's relatively early. Those are not conference finals or final series. Compare that to Kobe's 2 most efficient playoff series in this span of time. It's the 2009 Western Conference Finals against Denver and the 2010 Western Conference Finals against Phoenix. And look at Steph. His 2 most efficient playoff series in this span of time was the 2015 Conference Finals against the Rockets and the 2016 Conference Finals against the Thunder. The later you go in the playoffs, the better the competition is. So I think it's telling that Steph and Kobe's most efficient playoff series came in the conference finals, whereas SGA's came in the first round and the second round. And then we can look at their impact on their team's overall offense too. In the same span of time, in the postseason, Kobe-led offenses posted a +5.2 relative offensive rating, and the offense was 12 points better with Kobe on the court. For Steph, from 2015 to 2019, his offenses posted a +7.8 relative offensive rating, and the offense was 6.6 points better with him on the court. And then you have SGA, and over the last 3 postseasons, SGA-led offenses only posted a +1.6 relative offensive rating, and the team's offense is 7.6 points worse with him on the court. Why does all this matter? Because it shows you that in terms of team impact, SGA-led offenses are nowhere near what peak Steph or peak Kobe-led offenses were doing in the playoffs. I would argue the relatively unimpressive impact SGA has on his team's offense has to do with the first point about his individual scoring efficiency and the annual regression that he sees. To bring this all together, this is not me hating on SGA or attacking SGA. He's a great player, but when you evoke the names of Kobe Bryant and Steph Curry, who I would argue are consensus top 10 players in NBA history, and they're both top 5 guards in NBA history, you're going to have to make sure that what he brings to the table and what his body of work includes holds up next to theirs. And based on the numbers, it doesn't. And that tracks with how it feels watching him. It feels like he's put together really strong regular seasons, and then he has these playoff performances that are kind of underwhelming or nowhere near the standard he set in the regular season, but his team is good enough to win even despite that. That doesn't mean his MVP was not earned. That does not take away his championship. But when you hold him up to those guys, what he's doing is not the same as what they were doing. His scoring efficiency in the regular season does not translate to the postseason in the same way Kobe's and Steph's did. His impact on his team's offense in the regular season does not translate to the postseason the same way Kobe's and Steph's did. And that's okay. Everyone can't be Steph and Kobe. They are among the greatest players the game has ever seen. I'm also not calling SGA a playoff dropper because guys who deserve that label are criminally bad in the playoffs to the point where they are not impactful at all and they are actively detrimental. I don't think SGA is in that territory. I just think his postseason performances in his prime do not match up with the regular season and his impact has not been as strong. That doesn't mean he's trash. It just also doesn't mean he's equally as great as some of the guys people mention him with, but he's young enough to add layers to his game and he can improve and maybe he will put together a bigger body of work that actually looks like what Kobe and Steph did, but so far he hasn't done that. I also think he would benefit from adding an off-ball game and working as a cutter a little bit more, and also adding a post game, so that way he doesn't always have to get his looks out of a high pick and roll or static isolation against a set defense with 10 eyes on him. I think if he can add those layers to his game, it would actually give him a better chance of maintaining or even improving some of the efficiency we talked about, and it would make him more resilient to defensive coverages so that he doesn't struggle in the playoffs in the way that he has. That's all I got today. Let me know in the comments, do you think SGA was put in these conversations too quick? Or do you have an argument that he is at the level of peak Steph and peak Kobe? And what do you want to see him add to his game to address his consistent playoff struggles?